There will be spoilers in this review, so be warned. Come on. Come on. Let's go! Finally.
Oh, good stuff, Cam. So what you think?
Well, appreciate you all for joining us. My name is Cam.
And my name is Trail Sav.
This is Views from the Couch, the best place to get your views on everything gaming, all from the comfort of your couch.
Obviously, we know this review was slightly late, but we want to try something new on the channel and see if this is how we want to approach game reviews moving forward.
I should also mention that before we get started, I've done everything I possibly can on my first playthrough of Black Myth Wukong, meaning I completed all of the optional side quests, beat the optional bosses, and got the secret ending, which does require you to beat the final boss twice.
And the opposite of that, I got as far as that blood tiger and cut the game off for good.
Which is cool because this allows us to share multiple perspectives on the game. Obviously, I have a lot more to say as far as the actual review is concerned, but seeing how we're not a channel full of yes men, it's nice to have that experience shared with someone who hasn't completed the game fully. So with all that being said, let's start talking about the game itself. I'll start with my early impressions. I went into this game as blind as possible. I only saw the initial teaser trailers and the release date trailer. I didn't want my experience to get tampered with by watching any early reviews, impressions, or any of those 15-minute early gameplay videos that came out before the game's official release. I wanted my experience to be as neutral as possible and not to have an overly positive or negative mindset going into my playthrough.
I feel that I probably went in exactly opposite of Kim. I didn't see that much when it comes to story, but I did look at combat and stuff like that, and it started to like hype level started to like Dwayne because I started to see how it looked, but I didn't, do story. I just wanted to see how the combat and graphics looked and stuff like that.
For sure. For me, one of the only things I heard prior to going into this game was that it was comparable to God of War. To be honest, I didn't really get that vibe. I'll probably upset some people with this, but this game truly did feel like a Souls-like or light. Take your pick, I don't really care. I understand some people say because of the boss rush nature of the game that it can't be compared to a Soulsborne game. However, I think that Souls games are structured very similar. You go to an area of a game, you explore, you do some optional quests, and then you fight the major boss of the area. I mean, when you think of Souls game, you tend to think of the bosses that are in the game. Take Elden Ring, for example. You think of the Millennia boss fight, or even now with the DLC, the Concert Radahn fight. I mean, I even heard some people liken it to a Devil May Cry game, and I mean, we'll talk about combat and character dialogue later, but you can't do this in Wukong. Yeah, the Destined one ain't doing all that. Maybe in the mythos, but not in the actual gameplay. But yeah, the first thing I noticed while playing the game is the visuals are amazing. From the opening fight on the clouds to another boss fight where you're fighting in this yin and yang like setting in this ocean area, the game is a visual spectacle. The initial prologue was engaging and made me want to play more and understand what happened and why it happened. As for combat, it was okay at first. I knew we were eventually going to get more abilities and tools, so I wasn't going to be too harsh about it at the beginning. What about you, Xtra?
Yeah, I would say the exact same thing. I think visual, it was so much love put into the game by that gamer studio. You can tell, even with the lack of women, it was still a lot of love put into that gaming studio. I think one of the things that impressed me the most, not even just the boss arenas, but the animation and stuff that we got after each chapter. Like the one, even though it was super weird, the one with that fox and the stop motion animation was absolutely beautiful. Straight crazy because bro, did what he had to do to a fox, but it was still like really good. And that's where you can tell, that's one thing I love in video games, when you put love and thought into it. As for the combat, I think I am on the like legit 1% who say I think Black Myth Wukong's combat is absolutely horrible. I shouldn't say horrible. That's that's a little bit strange, but I think it's bare bones. I think that it should have more liberty, knowing the myth of Wukong, no pun intended, and what he can do. I think there could have been so many liberties taken to make this some of the best combat ever. If you look at other games to compare it to, not even God of War, not even the Souls games, but other action beat 'em up games, you'll think of something like Sifu. Sifu is, you know, a very small game, but the combat expands. If you need something ranged, you could throw the weapon at the enemy and things of that nature. If you want to hit heavy attacks, you can hit heavy attacks, combos, things of that nature. I wish it wouldn't have happened. Think about it as like in a fighting game aspect. Nobody likes a fighting game where you pressing square all the time to get your combos off. You're going to want to hit lights or down heavies or whatever the fighting game lingo is. I kind of wish that was in Wukong as well. I understand that you had like I'm about to call them ashes of war, but the memories of stuff that you get from when you beat bosses. I understand that, but I just wish there was more. That pole supposed to reach the heavens. So if I want to knock a ranged enemy off of their perch, let me use that pole to knock a ranged enemy off that perch. I think the combat is what took me out the game, because I believe everything else is beautiful.
And now that we've probably pissed off all of the hardcore gamers and Wukong stands out there, for those of you who are still watching, let's move on and talk about our actual experience with the story of Black Myth Wukong.
This stone has stood for countless days.
Nah, we're trolling. In all seriousness though, after the initial story segment, I personally wasn't that invested in the story until about chapter 5. The overall objective of finding the Great Sage or Wukong's relics was enticing for me, but the individual stories within the chapters didn't really fascinate me until the final 2. But from what you experienced, what were your thoughts on the story, Detro?
I think the story, again, could have done better with just a little bit more liberty and freedom. I think because that's all his character is and what it is about. It's about liberty. It's about freedom. That's who Wukong is. I think it would have done more of that. I think it, you know, if a female touch happened on the script, I think that would have, it would have came out more. But in all honesty, I really think that it was, they leaned too much into the Souls aspect of storytelling, in which I think that only works well with Dark Souls and every Soulsborne, in which you figuring a lot of stuff out on your own, and it's also very, very boring. It's extremely boring. I think the only parts of the story that's not boring is get into a boss fight and you see their initial cutscene of the bosses that you're about to fight. So like when you fought the mole, him and his father, I think that stuff is not boring. You see in their cutscene, you see them talking, or when you get to the first like secret boss, the gold baby thing, that was extremely fire, and you could tell the love that you put into it, because I think there was like an old like Chinese movie that he was doing a word for word like reenactment of that movie in that one boss fight, and it was really, really done well. But everything else, and can somebody please explain to me why we turned it to a cicada and never turned to that cicada ever again?
Right.
But other than that, it was I would just say, like, I don't want to say mid because the internet hates the word mid, so I'm gonna give that story of Chicago decent. You take that how you will.
Yeah, I think for me, it boils down to the main character, the Destined One, or as I like to call him, Team Wukong. This is the main reason I say this game to me feels more Souls-like than anything. Again, I know I may get some slack for saying this, but Team Wukong is extremely boring. He has no personality, and for me, that negatively impacts a lot of the character interactions throughout the story. It would have been a lot more fun if Team Wukong had a personality more akin to the beginning of the game with Wukong.
All these years, except for that pig, you're the one who talks the tallest tales. Good. I am entertained. Speaking of entertainment, wouldn't it be fun if I pluck your extra eye out for my snack and allow you to keep the other two? Because I'd hate to let you miss how I'll slaughter each mongrel of the cord.
It would have been nice to get this level of sass when it came to Wukong going up against a lot of the major bosses. I mean, the most we get is the game mentioning that he's a trickster.
No matter how many times you come around, you're still as mischievous as ever, eh?
But that aspect of his personality doesn't shine throughout the story. Again, making this more similar to a Souls experience with a silent protagonist that interacts with the world rather than an established character. Games like God of War and Devil May Cry have these characters interact with the world and its enemies, whether it be Kratos' no-nonsense tolerance or Dante talking crazy.
Leave now, mortal! The likes of you are forbidden in this land! You who are powerless are not worthy to set foot here!
Wow, I've never seen a talking mud before. You know, in a dog show, you definitely take first place.
You ugly human make a mockery of me!
Easy, Fido. How about I take you out for a walk? Come on, puppy. Let's go.
You'll regret this, you worm!
It's showtime. Come on.
I just personally think that the game would have been more enjoyable with the protagonist having an established personality and having those back and forth with the bosses he encounters. I also know a lot of people are going to counter this with lore scrolls that you get throughout the game, but to that I say engaging stories can relay world building, character backstories, and more through interesting dialogue and NPCs, which aside from the Tiger Blacksmith and the Boar, there weren't a lot of standouts in my opinion. The point is, I ain't trying to read all these essays in your video game. I will say that the music videos at the end of the chapters and the secret ending were really cool and enjoyable to watch, and I wish I could share some of that with you all, but we ain't trying to get copyrighted, so you have to look that up for yourselves on your own time. But enough about the story, let's get into the real meat and potatoes of this game, which is the gameplay. I feel like this is probably going to be the more mixed portion of the review.
What you mean by that?
There are a lot of things about the gameplay that I really like, and there are a lot of things about it that make me want to throw my controller at the nearest wall.
No, that's facts. There's a lot of things in this gameplay that just turned me off in the game in general from finishing it. And I want to make this clear as possible. This is not a skill issue thing. I think, you know, I would get my PlayStation name, but I'm not trying to get that hate mail on my account. But if you go through my trophies catalog, I'm about that life. I just think like the gameplay is boring, and I like variety within my gameplay. I'm sorry. Again, this is not Streets of Rage in which I'm pressing 2 or 3 buttons. Not 3 is too generous for this game. I'm pressing 2 buttons to get the boss done, especially with the amount of damage that we do to these bosses throughout the game. You can, like, it's so much that they could have put into this game. I believe hindsight is 20/20. I know, but if you want to be real with a review, each pole that you get could have did something different. Each stance, there could have been way more stances. Shoot, you could have stroked off Dragon Ball to put a Kamehameha in there or something like that. I don't know, but there is so much more that you could have did with this game that would have made me enjoy it more, and I think a lot of other people. Again, it's kind of like if you ever see somebody make some good macaroni and then you get in there and you take a bite and you're just like, yo, there's no flavor, and you was deceived by how beautiful it looks. That was me with the gameplay. Again, it's not a skill issue. Trust me on that. If I like a game, I will jump over that difficulty curve and get what I have to get done. I just think that that's what the game was missing for me, was because I can sit through a story. I can sit through a boring story. I can sit through a lot of talking and things of that nature. But I can't sit through just tapping square and you telling me that's amazing gameplay. It's not. There's a lot of games within that soul genre who takes that soul genre and make it their own. Games like Neo, who give you different stances and different weapons, how to, beat a boss and things of that nature. You can look at Elden Ring and all the plethora of things that made that game different. You can look at Bloodborne. On the outside looking in, Bloodborne is probably just, using them axe weapon. But there's a plethora of weapons. And my favorite hating on game, I hate this game, but it's true. Lies of P is like that as well. I think the game's garbage. But there's so much variety in what you could do with that game. I wish Wukong had that.
I get that. Like I said, before all the hardcore gamers TM come at me, I have done everything I possibly can in the game, including unlocking the secret ending. So just know that my critiques come from my own experience and playthrough with the game. And any negatives I have come from a place of wanting the game to be even better than what I played through. So, let's start with the positives. This game has great customization. The skill tree is massive, and there are a lot of abilities players can choose from as you level up Team Wukong. From leveling up your main stats, your combat stances, spells, and transformations, you can prioritize what build you want for your Destined one. That even further extends to the gear system, where you can grant Team Wukong certain passive abilities depending on the set you have on. The spirits that you can equip give you additional combat abilities and passives, my personal favorite being the Gore-Eye Daoist that grants you an attack boost in the area you lay the staff down in. The Curios acting as accessories that give you additional passive abilities, and although there are only 4 in the game, the vessels that you obtain from the secret areas in the game, with only 1 being story obtained, also grant abilities that, depending on the battle, can shift the tides in your favor. Certain weapons also offer additional passives that can help tailor your build. You can even customize your gourd in this game. You can also respec any abilities you have at any given time, so if you want to change your build or just experiment with different options, the game encourages it. The point is, this game allows you to build Team Wukong in any way you want, whether that be a high risk, high reward build or more of a defensive tank. There's even a spell you learn if you complete a quest in Chapter 3 that disables your spirits, vessels, and transformations, but increases your attack. So if you really are a true hardcore gamer, you can really test your mettle with that. The game also gives you a relic at the end of each chapter that allows you to choose from 3 passive abilities that you can equip on Team Wukong. The amount of exploration and side activities you can do in this game is also great, and this game rewards curiosity, so going off the beaten path is encouraged and allows you to really take in all the game has to offer. Also, the final boss and second part of the boss fight you have to complete in order to unlock the secret boss fight, Earlong, is some of the most enjoyable moments of gaming I've had this year, hands down.
So with all those positives, it seems like this game is pretty solid in your opinion, right?
Well, as they say, nothing is perfect, and Wukong has a few blemishes on its pearls that I have to address. Number 1, and this is the most glaring issue in my opinion, is that the input delay is trash. I don't know how it is on PC because I played this on PS5, but there are so many times that I've lost because Team Wukong didn't dodge when I pressed circle or drink his gourd when I pressed L1. Especially when it comes to this boss.
You're the one who ruined it all!
I'll get to that later. Another thing is the lack of combo variety in this game. Other than the heavy attack that changes when you switch stances, and when you have enough focus, the light combo into a heavy attack, there's not a lot of variety in this department for me. Wukong is this incredibly strong figure that has access to all these spells and abilities and transformations. Remember the clip I showed of that crazy Virgil combo? It would have been cool to see Team Wukong have access to even a fraction of the crazy stuff you can do in that game. Even the final boss shows you some abilities that we as players should be able to do. But shout out to the mod community for eventually making that happen, if they haven't done so already. As it stands, the only variety to the standard combo we have access to is certain weapons resembling a spear that changes the animation. Side note, the Wukong stance being tied to New Game Plus 4 sucks. I'm sorry, it should have been a reward for starting a New Game Plus after getting the secret ending.
Alright. Is that it?
Nah, I got some more. Trust. I'ma just say it, and I know, get good. But the Chapter 4 main bosses sucked. The boar fight and the chapter finale bosses were grueling experiences. Remember when I said the input delay sucks? Well, Mr. Boar tests that frustration to a T with his unique mechanic of testing the game's ability to register if you've pressed the circle button, according to them. The Chapter 4 final boss having a great second phase of reducing your maximum stamina and having so many animations and not enough time to punish them was a grade A experience. Having more defensive options would have been appreciated too. I mean, an actual parry button would have been nice. Oh, right. It's only tied to cutscenes.
It do be like that.
Yeah. I'm calm now. I think unlocking Nimbus and only being able to use it in the final chapter is a bit disappointing. It would have been cool to be able to take it to other chapters for faster traversal options, especially in Chapter 3, given how big that area is, and just to overall get an even deeper appreciation of the environmental spectacle the game has to offer. Also, mini map, please. It was hard for me to get through certain areas of the game because I kept second guessing if I was going to story or optional stuff. And if you've played video games, you know if you're going towards story, you're going the wrong way.
Facts.
That also ties to the quest structure of this game as well. Having a journal entry that details when you've started an optional quest and gives you subtle hints of progression as far as advancing the quest, or having some indicator of nearby quests would have been a nice quality of life feature. I know a lot of the true hardcore gamers and get good gamers will shame me for this, but for a lot of the optional quests and areas, I had to look up some walkthroughs. And one last thing, I promise, and this is it, but the performance was a bit wonky at times. I was playing this game in performance mode, and there were parts of the games that had some noticeable frame drops, not enough to make my playthrough of the game bad or anything, but it was still noticeable.
And is that it?
That's it, I promise. Now we can move on to our final score of the game. Before I give my final score, I want to preference this by explaining my metric for scoring. Shout out to Angry Joe.
You done f***ed it up!
Because I base my scoring off his review scoring metric. 5 being average, with 6 being slightly above, 7 being a good game, 8 being a great game, 9 being an amazing game, and 10 being a near perfect game. While obviously the other side of the review score tying to the game not being as good. I don't believe in decimals, so for me it's either an 8 or a 9. There's no 8.5 for me.
And for me, my metric of scoring, really if the game's fire or not. I joke around with scoring with my friends a lot. I really don't take it too seriously, but I do take my experience seriously in games. So with that being said, you know what? I'll give it a title instead of a score. This game is the best game I never finished. I didn't enjoy the combat aspect of the game, not having as much freedom as I wanted to, but I do think the game hit a lot of marks that a lot of people will probably see in their game of the year. In all honesty, is it a game of the year contender for me? It probably cracked my top 15, maybe. Please don't let my opinion, if you haven't bought the game, deter you from buying it. I would say, if you like action games, if you like soul wannabes, definitely give this game a try.
And there you have it. With that said, my final score for Wukong is a solid 8 out of 10. I truly think this is a great game, and I understand why people have this as their game of the year. I think that Wukong is a great experience, and I would recommend it for anybody with a PS5 or a good PC. Hopefully, Game Science takes some of the valid criticism that people have with this game and make an even better experience for us all to enjoy, come whatever their next project may be.
And that's all, folks. Appreciate you for tuning in. If you stuck with us this long, let us know your thoughts about the game. If you love it, hate it, we want to hear it, so comment it down below.
Absolutely. Also, let us know what you think about this format for future reviews. We had a lot of fun putting this together for you guys, and hopefully you look forward to future uploads from us. Also, tune into our podcast we have on the Tweeking Media channel.
That's right, we have Threes of the Ring for all you sports fans, specifically wrestling and basketball, but we do talk about other stuff. And we also have Attack on the Culture coming soon, which is our nerd podcast where we talk about gaming, anime.
Be sure to follow us on our social media platforms. Links in the description box below. If you like the art that was displayed in this video, big shout out to our homie Xtra, Devin Johnson. If you want to commission him, links will be in the description box as well. If you like the beats that were played in this video, shout out to our homie Chaz Vibe. Links to his channels will also be in the description box below, so go out and support him. He has some dope music. Like, comment, subscribe, and share this video as it only helps our channel grow. Thanks again for watching, guys. Peace.
Peace.